scripture says, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he, to thee, but his heart is not with thee." Very important lesson tonight. It's entitled "The Power of Attitude." The power of attitude. Next to knowing who Jesus is, nothing is more important than having a good, positive attitude. Your attitude will make or break you. Your attitude will heal or hurt you. Your attitude will make you friends or make you enemies. It'll make you happy or make you miserable. It'll make you a success or it'll make you a failure. Attitude is vitally important. Some people think that the whole world stinks. I've told this story before, but I like it, so I'll tell it again. Once a cranky grandpa laid down to take a nap. To have a little fun, his grandson put some Limburger cheese on his mustache, right under his nose. Grandpa woke with a snort, staggered out of the bedroom, and shouted, "The bedroom stinks!" On through the house he went, shouting louder, "The whole house stinks!" He charged out on the porch and shouted as loud as he could, "The whole world stinks!" The truth is, it was Grandpa who stunk. The problem, listen to me, was right under his nose. The problem is that our attitude has, in many cases, become negative. Change your negative attitude to positive ones, and you can change your world. Thank you. Tonight's lesson, if you haven't got it by now, is about attitude. This lesson applies to every person in this room and to every empty seat. It applies. Because sometimes our attitude is good, sometimes they're not so good, and other times they just plain stink. Many of the ideas that I'm going to be sharing with you tonight are from a book called The Awesome Power of Attitude, written by Dale Galloway. In this lesson, I want to look at 3 facts about your attitude. Fact number 1, your attitude reveals the real you. Your attitude is who you are. So how important is your attitude? Your attitude is more important than facts, more important than circumstances, more important than what others say, is more important than your past, it's more important than your education, it's more important than your money. Your attitude is more important than anything else. Understand your attitude is much deeper than just a few thoughts you might think or not think. Your attitude comes out of the very core of your being. Your attitude represents your disposition. It represents your outlook. It represents your character. The Bible says in Proverbs 23:7, which we read, "For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, saith he to thee, but his heart is not with thee." Richard, why don't you help me tonight? Okay. Turn around and face them. Shake that jar. Shake it good. Okay, give it back. Stay right there. Try it again. I didn't set this up, my wife did. So it's not working like it's supposed to work. Okay, Richard, Thank you. What was supposed to happen? You got some water out?
Yeah.
Okay. When he shook the jar, water came out. I wanted a bunch of water to come out.
So you weren't taking it out?
But there was some water came out. He got a little bit wet. So let me ask you, why did any water come out of that jar? Really, come here and take this mic. I need another mic, Anthony.
It's right there next to the,
Come take this mic.
next to your water.
Why did any water come out of that jar? Oh, there's another one here. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
I think water came out because the top wasn't tight.
Because what?
The top wasn't screwed on tight.
Okay. That's a good answer, a logical answer. That's not the answer I'm looking for. So why did any water at all come out of that jar? Okay.
Because what inside will come out if it's shook hard enough.
Oh, that's good.
Very good. Excellent answer. I look for people to say, because the jar was shook, and had it been right, had that lid been right, he'd have a lot of water out, and you would have seen the water on the floor, which would dry up, be no problem. And you would have seen it, and then you'd have said, well, because the lid was loose. That's why the water came out. But no, the water came out because water is what was in the jar. And since the jar is full of water, and if the jar shook, she doesn't have it quite as full as I wanted it. I wanted it right up to the brim and that lid loose so that it would almost seem that Richard got baptized again. But it came out because that water is what was in the jar. Jesus said in Matthew chapter 15, verses 17 to 20, do not ye understand that whatsoever entereth in at the mouth goes into the belly and is cast out into the drought? But those things which proceed out of your mouth come forth from the heart, and they defile a man. For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornications, thefts, false witness, blasphemies. These are the things which defile a man, but to eat with unwashed hands, which the Jews made a big deal out of, and a lot of parents do, defileth not a man. If you eat with unwashed hands, that don't defile you. Your attitude always becomes actions or reactions. People who don't act are usually reactive. Let's visualize it this way. The attitude inside you is like a jack-in-the-box. How many of you ever played jack-in-the-box with a jack-in-the-box? Most of us have. And so you turn the little handle and the little tune goes, and pretty soon Jack will jump out of the box and he pops out. That's a vivid picture of our attitude. When we least expect it, it will pop out and cause other people to either like us or dislike us. You see, much louder than your words you speak is your attitude that keeps telling people what you're really like. Personally, I find this true that my attitude reveals the real me to be quite sobering. I like to say, like as many others do, when I do or say something that's obviously not the right thing, I didn't mean to say that. Where did that come from? It came from inside. The Bible says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. When I have a negative, nasty, critical attitude, maybe I should say if I ever had a negative, nasty, critical attitude, that would be the real me. That would be the real person. without God, leaving God out of the picture, the person. We don't have an attitude just because we had a bad day. All that a bad day does is bring out of us what's in us. Just brings it out. So fact number one, your attitude reveals the real you. So what a difference your attitude makes. Your attitude affects every relationship in your life. And sometimes relationships will never get started in the first place because many times your attitude has built up walls, making it very difficult for people to be around you. Bad attitudes affect your marriage, affects relationships, your relationships with your kids, at work, at church, and your friends. And the things that make the bad attitude so destructive is like the jar of water with that loose lid on it. A bad attitude is eventually going to spill out into some negative action, destructive words or deeds. In Numbers 12, 1 to 11, we read about two brothers and a sister. Numbers chapter 12, verses 1 to 11. The Bible says this. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. For he had married an Ethiopian woman. And they said, Hath the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? And the Lord heard it. Now, that's an important thing to bring out too, is that the Lord hears everything you say. Wherever you are, the Lord hears what you say. And he has a way to remember what you say and what has been said. Now the man Moses was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And the Lord spake suddenly unto Moses and said unto Aaron and unto Miriam, Come out, you three, into the tabernacle of the congregation. And the three came out. And the Lord came down in the pillar of cloud and stood in the door of the tabernacle and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. He said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, if the Lord will make myself known unto him in a vision, and we will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently and not in dark speeches and similitude of the Lord. And he, behold, wherefore then were you not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and he departed. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle. Behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow.
Thank you.
And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said unto Moses, Alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin against us, wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. You can sin with your mouth, not by smoking and doing drugs and so forth and so on, just with a tongue that's not controlled, just with a spirit that's not right. So listen, Moses had a good attitude. He was a meek man. He had a good attitude. The Bible says Moses was a humble man, more humble than anyone on the face of the earth. And here's what happens when a person is humble. First of all, they're teachable. Second of all, they're cooperative. Moses treated people as he wanted to be treated, and he lived a life that was properly lined up with God. But Moses' brother Aaron and his sister Miriam, on the other hand, chose a bad attitude, and that eventually spilled out. Miriam seemed to have had the worst attitude, and she infected her brother Aaron. In verse 1 of Numbers 12, we read that Miriam and Aaron began to talk against Moses because of his wife. Now, let's slow down a little bit. I want you to get this picture. Here they are, family members who Moses thought he could count on and trust, going behind his back and criticizing him, stirring up trouble among God's people against their leader, their own brother Moses. You can never trust people with a bad attitude.
Mm-hmm.
I want that to sink in.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it a little different. I will never trust anybody with a bad attitude. God will never trust anybody with a bad attitude. Why? Why can't you trust somebody with a bad attitude? I mean, attitude is attitude. And I've had people tell me, this is who I am. This is what I do. You see, most people who stir up trouble do not do so out of right reasons, but out of a bad attitude. The fact that Moses had married an Ethiopian wife was not the real problem. What was the problem? What was Miriam's problem? You got that mic? What was the problem? Take it to Dan first.
Jealousy sounds like part of it. And maybe power hungry.
Okay, Don.
You got it.
Okay, Valina, just be very brief though.
I was
Like,
just going
this
to
is a
say
long
that
lesson.
is authority. She didn't like the authority that also was against God. She didn't like, it was against God. The Lord said that when they were in the wilderness complaining, or people complaining, it was not that complaining against them, it was against God.
Okay. The reason that wasn't the problem, the problem was this. When Moses married an Ethiopian wife, it shook Miriam's jar. It bumped her. It brought out of her what was in her. I remember an old preacher years ago saying, you can tell what's in you when you're bumped. In fact, you never really see what's in a person till they're bumped, till something goes against them. Then you find out what's in them. But this bad attitude stemmed from her jealousy over her brother's position and leadership. And out of her own poor self-esteem, she allowed herself to become critical, and she chose to cause trouble. Many of the times, the things we criticize and get all stirred up about are not really the problems. The problem is our own sour, sick, bad attitude. I've seen and you've seen bad attitudes. Bad attitudes destroy marriages, destroy families, work environment, board meetings, ladies' meetings, church services, etc. You see, whatever you have an individual or group of people filled with a bad attitude and wearing a loose lid, trouble is bound to happen. Things will rapidly become negative. I missed giving you that point. That was fact number 2. Your attitude determines the success and failure of every relationship in your life. Your attitude determines the success and or failure of every relationship in your life. Fact number 3. Your attitude is always your choice. I like the man who was explaining to a friend about his days in college. He said, no, I never actually was in the top half of my class, but I can say that I was in the group that made the top half possible. 2 men are in prison. I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again because it goes with this lesson. 2 men were in prison, and they both look out through the bars, and one sees only mud, the other sees stars. What's the difference? It's the attitude of choice. Without a doubt, the human mind is the most awesome creation of God. With it, God has given us the ability to think, to reason, and to choose whether we will focus on positive thoughts or negative thoughts. In every one of our lives, there is the positive and the negative. Every person has a certain amount of negative, a certain amount of positive. The choice is as to which one we will focus on and feed, because that's what will grow in us. Understand, you can't choose what will happen to you today or any day. You can't choose it. It's beyond your control. But you can choose your own attitude. We each have the power to decide how we will respond to what happens to us. Dr. Viktor Frankl stood under the glaring lights of the Gestapo court in Nazi concentration camp. Soldiers had taken away from Viktor every earthly possession, his clothes, his watch, even his wedding ring. As Dr. Frankl stood there naked, his body shaved before these cruel men who tried to take every ounce of dignity from him. At that moment, Frankl said that he realized he was destitute except for one thing. He still had something that nobody could take from him, not even the Nazis. He still had the power to choose his own attitude. And he chose to not give that attitude to his enemies. He chose joy. He chose hope. He chose to be positive. He said, I have everything I need to be happy. I have everything I need to have joy. This is a story of a young man named Robert. Robert said, his hands are twisted and his feet are useless. He can't bathe himself. He can't feed himself. He can't brush his teeth. He can't comb his hair or put on his underwear. His shirts are held together by strips of Velcros. He drags like a worn-out audio cassette. Robert has cerebral palsy. The disease keeps him from driving a car, riding a bike, and going for a walk. But it didn't keep him from graduating from high school or attending Abilene Christian University, where he graduated with a degree in Latin. Having cerebral palsy didn't keep him from teaching at St. Louis College or from venturing overseas on 5 mission trips. And Robert's disease didn't prevent him from becoming a missionary to Portugal. He moved to Lisbon alone in 1972. He rented a hotel room and began studying Portuguese. He found a restaurant owner who would feed him after the rush hour and a tutor who would instruct him in the Portuguese language. Then he stationed himself daily in a park where he distributed brochures about Jesus. Within 6 years, he led 70 people to the Lord. One who became his wife, Rosa. When he speaks, men carry him in his wheelchair onto the platform. He lays his Bible in his lap with his stiff fingers. He forces the pages open. While people in the audience wipe away their tears, Robert could have asked for sympathy or pity, but he does just the opposite. He holds his bent hand in the air and boasts, I've got everything I need to be happy. I've got Jesus, and that's all that I need. Let me give you another example. Judy faced an enemy perhaps more powerful than the Nazis or cerebral palsy. She faced an enemy that was unrelenting, cruel, and unstoppable. She saw the things she loved taken away from her health, her energy, her job, her life. Yet in the heat of that battle, she went to a store in Brandon Town Center and brought a red t-shirt that said, attitude is everything. When the manager of the store found out why she wanted it, he was so moved by her attitude and courage that he gave the shirt to her. She wore it often to her treatments. Judy had cancer. Judy had cancer, but cancer never had her. Judy refused to give her attitude away to cancer. Another example I think of is our own Jim Kingsbury. You know, how many times, I visited him, how many times I wept, over Jim and that situation and didn't understand. Jesus, I don't understand why you don't raise Jim up. I don't understand why you don't heal. You know, but I never got that from Jim. I never picked that up around him. Anytime that I visited him, he had a smile. Even to the very end, he had a smile. He had a twinkle in his eye. And I thought, Lord, I want to be that way. I want to have that kind of an attitude, that my trust is in you no matter what you do. And no matter how you do with me and what you want to do to get glory for yourself, then, Lord, I trust you. And we've got to come to that place. Maybe right now you're feeling pretty broken. Your life has taken away too many turns for the worse. A lot of things have gone wrong. And you know what? A lot of things do go wrong in life. Life is not all sunshine. Life is not all blue skies and birds singing. There are storms that come. The snow does get deep. It does get cold. Things happen. It seems like everything may have fallen apart, fallen right down on top of you. You're weary, you're overwhelmed, your hopes and dreams are fading on the distant horizon. I know from personal experience that it's not easy when the stuff of life hits you on the head, knocks you down, and kicks you in the stomach while you're down, and maybe even kicks you alongside your head. But in such times, you must remember that there is something that your situation can never take away from you. There's something that not even Nazis, cancer, cerebral palsy, even what you're facing can take away from you your power to choose your own attitude. You are the destiny. You have a destiny, and you choose that destiny every day of your life. No matter what happened to you, some of you have had tough times, bad marriages, health problems. The attitude choice, though, is still yours. And understand that Jesus wants to help you choose and cultivate a positive attitude. I find it both interesting and tragic that the one thing that no person or circumstance can ever take away from us, the awesome power to choose our own attitude, is usually the first thing that goes in a Christian's life when they fall out of God's will and fall out of the church. That's the first thing that goes. And if we allow events and people to cause us to be negative, we are only hurting ourselves more, because in addition to everything else, we're now forced to live with the effects and misery of our own bad attitudes. Your attitude reveals the real you. Your attitude determines the success of every relationship. Your attitude is always your choice. Now, before we end this lesson tonight, when we got time, I want to give you 4 steps that you can take home with you, or you can take to the bank tomorrow. Steps that will help you become a positive person. Step 1, begin speaking positive words. Before you speak, think this: what comes out of my mouth is what's in my heart. So I'm going to be careful what I say. Talk to yourself. The first step to becoming a more positive person is to work at learning to speak positive words. You know, whether you realize this or not, if you watch the news or listen to the news, even Fox News, after a while it's the same old stuff, over and over and over and over. And it's always anti, against anything that's right, against anything that's good, against anything that anybody is doing for the good. It's against that. And it's constant. It's drip, 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 drip. I want you to notice that I said you have to learn to speak positive words. Because speaking positively is something you have to learn by practice. It does not come naturally. It's always easier to talk negative, to criticize. Why? Because that's what we hear all the time. It's constant. I mean, most of us can do that without even thinking. We use negative words, comments, and phrases. They just flow effortlessly from our lips. The reality is that you help create the atmosphere in which you live by the words you speak. It's a powerful statement. You I'm not going to say help, you create the atmosphere in which you live by the words you speak. I'm going to say that again. You create the atmosphere in which you live by the words you speak. When your words are positive, you produce a creative, loving, accepting, positive environment. On the other hand, when you speak negative words, you create suspicion. You create mistrust. And a can't do anything right atmosphere. Therefore, the task of being a Christian, the task of a Christian life is to eliminate negative words, to do away with words that hurt and tear down, replacing them with positive words, words that build up, edify, and encourage other people. Did you ever hear about two guys who were in jail? Tom tried to be real positive no matter the situation. One day he sees his buddy Joe walking down the hall. He says to Joe, "Where are you going, buddy?" He said, "To the electric chair." Joe says, "More power to you." Tom answered, in a positive manner. Well, at least Tom was trying to speak positive words. You might say his heart was in the right place. Beginning tonight, I challenge you to try a little experiment with me. To everyone you meet, whether it's a gas station attendant, at a store, at home, at work, or at church, try to say something positive and uplifting. Do this for one day this week and see what happens. I will tell you what's going to happen. You're going to have a great day. Why? Because positive words create a loving, creative environment in which to live. Step number 2. No matter what happens, look for good and you're going to find it. A positive person, and that's the kind of person I want to always be, is not one who refuses to recognize the negative. He knows there are plenty of negatives out there, but he refuses to dwell on them. Remember, there's always a negative and positive in every person's situation. What a positive person does is to develop the habit of looking for the best results even from the worst conditions. It's always possible to look for something good even when things look bad. The remarkable fact is that when you look at what you look after, what you seek, that will what you'll find. People tend to find what they're looking for. They tend to see what they're looking for. What are you looking for in your life? Are you looking for negative or positive? We can look at the land and always see the giants, if that's what we're looking for. Or we can look at the same land and see a land that's flowing with milk and honey. You know that story. It's a matter of focus. It's a matter of choosing what you're going to look for. Let's apply this principle to marriage. In your marriage, if you're always looking for the faults, if you're always looking at the faults, if you're